the whole idea of the X-Men, the idea of the mutant and things like that, it's all like a critique on racism, on homophobia, on things like that, like all the protesting that's taking place, like the population of America is incredibly anti-mutant, and a lot of what the writers were writing about was just the critique of being anti-gay or being anti-black, and then they've also made efforts to, like you mentioned, there's Storm, there's a number of characters that they're from all over the globe. Like X-Men really tries to incorporate like characters from everywhere, and I thought that was cool as a kid. So like as a young kid, one of the first things that I could like really identify with, I remember like, yo, Bishop is a black man. I remember thinking that was like really fucking cool. You know what I mean? As a kid, I was like, yo, look, like, that's it. We made it. Like, we're in the X-Men. Like,
but I guess we do have some topics we need to get to. First up, we thought we're a pretty diverse group here. We thought it would be cool to talk about representation in gaming, pop culture in general. Why is it important to you? How do you think it can be done better? How do you think it's been done poorly?
How much time do we have?
We'll start with our guest. You can lead us in.
Ooh, okay. Firstly, I do want to say that the world is a diverse place. There's more than 7 billion people on the planet. So the fact that there are some people who think the world isn't different outside of their bubble, that's really not true. So sometimes I look at the argument of people saying it's forced or it's woke, but in my opinion, there are two key reasons that we need diversity. One of them is tolerance. Hopefully with education comes tolerance, right? We can't lie to ourselves, unfortunately. Things like xenophobia and racism and homophobia are still very alive. They're still very prevalent. I can only hope that introducing people to the fact that there is a diverse world around you and that those people are people just like you, I would certainly hope that that helps. Mental health is really a huge part of it too. I grew up in a really small town, a family of cattle ranchers. It was a very conservative town. I knew that my sexuality was different when I was 6, and I started to struggle with gender identity kind of concerns at 7. And I knew humanity's done a really good job of creating these little constructs and saying, okay, you have to check off all these boxes just because you're X. Yep. And I've never done that. I've never been good at that. And I never, ever, ever saw myself reflected in content. I never saw like strong-willed, independent girls. I never saw a lot of tomboys. I never saw females desire relationships with other females. I never saw trans people. So it became extremely depressing. I was very isolated. I didn't know how to talk about it. I didn't know who to go to. I didn't know where to find a community. And it led to me getting suicidal around 16 years old, and it was devastating. And then when I finally when shows like Queer as Folk and L Word came out in my 20s, and then it was like, oh my God, there are people like me. This isn't this like disgusting, bad, awful thing. And that was huge. That's one of the things that helped me develop a support community. It helped me come out. You know, it was very different back in the day, you know, the 80s and 90s. You know, my friend's daughter asked her mom, am I not pretty because none of the dolls in the store look like me?
Oh shit.
And that's what can happen if we don't show everybody that you're not alone. There are people like you. The agenda is just to show you that we're living in a diverse world. And I think lazy writing is really bad. There are a lot of minorities, especially from the 80s and 90s and time prior, who can say they've never seen themselves or their representation was always the butt of a joke.
Yeah.
So I think you can't just say, well, here's a person, we're going to paint him with a broad brushstroke. You need cultural relevance. You need more characters like Finn and Miles Morales. They're not just people who are minorities. They have an entire cultural story that's reflective. that for so many people. Like in Last of Us 2, when you stumble upon a synagogue and Dina starts talking about her Jewish roots, or Seth with the bigot sandwich. Like, I've had so many Seths. So that some people think, oh, you're forcing it on us. You're trying to convert people. No, it's just, we all exist in the real world. Like, it's life. And I just think the point is, and every human being deserves to be treated with respect until they do something that makes you lose your respect. And that thing should not be a skin pigment. It shouldn't be who they worship. And it shouldn't be who they sleep with, because that's not really your fucking business anyway. So that's kind of my thought process on it anyway.
Mateo, what's the next topic? We can't follow that.
Yes, you can't stop.
Shut it down. It's a 5-minute section.
No. Very well put. Like, God damn.
I feel like you may have thought about this before, Crystal.
Well, I mean, we did back one of the earlier episodes when we started the Game Junkie show last year. We did do an episode on the LGBTQIA community and helped people understand, like, it's not our people having an agenda of saying, oh, we want to turn you this way. It's like everybody is a person, and if you don't understand diversity, you might be lucky enough that you've always seen yourself represented. So you don't understand that other people may have a lot of struggles because they don't see themselves. Everybody deserves to see themselves. We exist in the real, like, it's just that simple to me.
It's so important for children too. Steven Universe, that show Steven Universe is so near and dear to my heart just because of the level of like diversity and relationships and like real world issues that they present to children. That shit is so important, especially when you're that young, trying to find your place in this world, trying to figure out who you are and what you want to be. Like, it's important. It's incredibly important.
I always identified it. I loved shows like what's the Adventure Times with Finn, Chowder. I always love these shows that have like androgynous characters. You don't really know if they're male or female, and I always love being able to identify with these characters in these shows. I'm like, yo, that's kind of me. I'm like that.
I mean, it makes sense. I feel like, I don't know. Can you, I mean, again, there's more than 7 billion people on the planet. Can you literally say that all those people fit into these same little categorical boxes that, you know, these archetypes that society has created? You can't. The world is more fluid than that. It's not just black and white or gay or straight or this God or that God. It's not that simple. It's not that discernible by little bitty check marks. It's just like life is fluid. So
even the quote unquote easy definitions, right? Because we had this conversation on one of our podcast episodes about what is a man, like what, and you know, people claim that's easy. That's easy. There's man, there's woman, boom, done. Here's the criteria, and boom, that's what you are. And we broke it down in that episode. We're like, it's not that fucking easy. Who knows what a man is? Like, is it physical characteristics? But no, it's not just purely physical. It's all over the place. It's just how you identify. Like, it's an interesting concept.
I love that people like to point out and say, oh, it's science. Like, science just tells you what it is. But they fail to realize that, like, what science does is it describes the world, like all the different things that exist. Science could tell you this is all the stuff that exists. But then it's just us as failures of people and flawed individuals and you know, in all of our ways, we're the people that are categorizing these things and putting them into buckets. And then later down the road, we look at those buckets and say, science defined this thing. And it's like, no. Science defined, like, yeah, there's these chromosomes. There's a pattern here, or these gametes, or any number, depending on how deep you want to get into the whole gender thing, right? It describes these things, but it doesn't really say what you should do with that stuff. Like, at the end of the day, we start categorizing these things, like, oh, no, you call that thing a woman, and then it's like, I'm not trying to call women a thing, but you know, this collection of characteristics, right? You call that a woman, and then anything that deviates from that, you're like, well, that must not be a woman. But then it's like, sometimes there's cases where you can't categorize something, and then you're like, oh, that's just an exception. Let's just ignore that because we have these convenient buckets or whatever. And it's like, it's kind of shitty to not sit and like reassess your beliefs and reassess what exists. Now we're introducing these new things. I put them in quotes because trans people have been around forever, but
it's interesting that you say that. Now I'm 6'1", right? I have big shoulders. I'm a very large. I can finally be part of the 1% and something because it ain't fucking wealth. So like there is always an issue using public bathrooms for me. I have short hair. I don't wear clothes that are typically defined as feminine. Public bathrooms are such a huge deal for me. I cannot count the number of times that women make comments, call security. I've been called an it. People have snatched their children and say, don't wash your hands next to it.
That's
and
fucking
it's
awful.
like, is it because the bucket of science says I'm supposed to? So if I had long hair and wore a dress, you would assume I'm not a pervert? Are you assuming I'm a pervert? Like, so that's the thing is I'm not saying science isn't valid, right? But we have to rationally understand that there's more than that. It's not that simple. There are human emotions involved.
The more interesting thing about that type of experience is that there is no science there. Someone just glanced at you and made some number of calculations in their head and said now they have an opinion about what gender you are or anything like that. And it's like, they didn't fucking come and measure anything scientifically. They just glanced at you. So it's like any trans person that passes for their preferred gender, it's like they automatically become whatever gender they identify as in society. And if they don't pass, then they get called security on or any number of those things. And I don't know, it's just kind of, there's like a contradiction there within people. And I know there's a deviation from representation in games, but it is the conversation, really. It's just like how people view things. Like, I don't know. I guess to bring it back a little bit, to empathize with the people that are hurt by more inclusivity in games. Like, I could understand, like, all right, in a time, right, every single movie was like practically 100% white. And then as Hollywood, as directors, script writers, as those people became more inclusive, they allowed, Hispanic, women, black people, gay people, whatever, into their movies. White people are kind of losing something they had, right? They had 100%. Now maybe they got like 70% or 60%. Like, so the people that look at that, what they don't see that we have this big chunk of the pie. What they see is we've lost all this ground. Like, look at all these other people they're including. Like, they must have their agenda for taking this away from me. And like, I could empathize with, like, I could understand the feeling. When I say empathize, I'm not like saying like their feelings are accurate to or good or anything like that. I'm saying, like, I understand, like if someone taxes you more for the greater good, what you feel is I got less dollars in my pocket. You know what I mean? And so it's like, I kind of understand the feeling, but on the flip side, it also feels kind of shitty, right? Like when you sit down and you create something, you make a whole gang of decisions, right? So if you're gonna create, like when you sit down and create a character, right? You go through every single piece of this creative character, and you're like, oh, I picked their height, I picked their gender, I picked their skin color, right? All the way through. And this is no different for writers, for anybody that creates characters, right? They do all these things. It feels kind of weird that anytime a character is black or a character is gay, it's for wokeism. When the reality is like every time someone went and created a white character, they made the decision to make that character white. And they view that as a default. Like the default character is a white person, and they're 6 foot, they're a man, they have a cock. It's got to be large, of course, because we don't like little dicks either.
Hey, Batman showed his cock, and it's very average.
I don't remember this.
You don't remember the comic where they showed like the side profile of the Batman wing?
Nah.
I'm gonna need you to put
I'm
that
gonna
in the
Google it.
description for me.
I'm gonna Google it.
The Batman Wang better be a thumbnail. That needs to be incorporated in one of the thumbnails. Okay, the silhouette. Okay, but I'm just saying it's kind of shitty that like they don't view the decision to make a character white as like a decision, but they view it. If you make a character black, it's like, oh, there must be some ulterior motive as to why they chose this race or something. I don't know. It feels kind of shitty, I think. But.
I mean, you said some really cool things that make me think of a lot of other stuff. And part of the point of like representing people is so you don't like automatically freak out at when you see people that are different from you. But if I were going to create a character that I would resonate more would be a character that's lived my lifestyle. Do you know what I mean? So it's like as more diversity gets into filmmaking and video games and writing, you're going to see more diverse characters because people maybe in some cases want to create people that they understand. So it's like, do you know what I mean? Like, I just don't see how that's a bad thing. And that is definitely a wiener, by the way. I just Googled it. That is definitely a wiener. That is a wiener.
So, all right. In the sizes, all right. Is this like average? Is it like meh?
Okay, I'm not a penis expert by any means.
I mean, we had the conversation, all right? You want to see...
It's not like, he's not packing a Chris Brown. I can tell you that. We're not close to that.
Is it girthy?
No, I'm going to say this is an average, I'm going to say this is I don't know if I should say the first thing that popped into my mind. This is to me, this is a perfectly average.
Circumcised, uncircumcised.
It appears to be circumcised.
Wow.
So
It's circumcised, but it was happened mid combat though. He wasn't originally circumcised.
Oh wow! I was gonna say Batman is of my ilk, but now I did not.
Yeah,
go through this mid combat.
Yeah, I mean it's circumcised, so I'm gonna assume it's definitely a Western, very average, normal Caucasian penis.
Okay.
That's what we're working with.
That's what's up.
So going back though, before the Batman Wang, you made a comment, Crystal, about the type of character that you would resonate with is a character that's like yourself. Yeah. Another thing that is very interesting. There's a group of people, right? They tend to be the group of people that have been most represented in society. So typically white men. I hear the sentiment a lot of like, oh, I don't really care what race or what gender or what sexual orientation this character is. I just want a good written character that has depth. And they, a lot of people have that opinion, and oftentimes I feel like it's almost like a place of privilege. Like you don't even care about race anymore because you've been the race most represented, so it's not even a thing that you think about because it's just the default. It's always there. Whereas like me growing up, I can't really remember a lot of Black or Hispanic people that are represented like really positively in a prominent role in like a movie. Like there of course they exist, and I mean I've seen a bunch of them, but it was not like just watching movies growing up. It was just across the board mostly white men. And the same thing for video games. Like even still, like just looking at like the lead characters, the genders, the races, like stuff like that, it's just most of the time they're just white men.
Yep. Pooch, list me 5 Latinx superheroes.
Miles Morales. There's the other Spider-Man
2099.
The Mexican guy. I like that guy too. Oof. I'm losing it right there.
Yep.
That's where I'm dropping off. I could think of 2. And yeah. And I like Spider-Man, so I'm
Storm was, I think Storm's origin is Middle Eastern, I believe.
She was Halle Berry.
Your origin is Halle Berry.
Origin is Halle Berry.
I believe Storm's origins were somewhere in the area of like Egypt, or somewhere in that ballpark, I think. Yeah, I can't think of.
Yeah, it'd be like
Any
America
prominent-
Chavez. America Chavez. Oscar Isaac is playing Moon Knight, and that Moon Knight series is coming out. I'm pretty stoked about that. I think that series is gonna be awesome. I love Oscar Isaac.
But Moon Knight is not. Moon Knight's a white dude, isn't he?
I think they've changed it over where his origin's a little
Okay.
murkier in this new one, but I'm not positive yet. But I mean, Oscar Isaac is a Latinx actor, so we're gonna claim
Yeah.
him. We're
You
claiming
gotta claim
we're
the
claiming the
actor
live
too,
action
you know?
version of it.
No,
Yeah,
that's a good question though, because I can't think of a lot of Hispanic superheroes or even minority superheroes. Really,
Right.
I'm not sure.
And if you're a black superhero, they always toss the word black into your name. Like
I
Black
think
Black Panther.
Wasn't Spawn black though?
Spawn was black. Yes.
Right.
Spawn
yes.
Yeah,
was,
Spawn
yes.
was a cool hero. I thought that was
Okay,
dope.
can we talk about how I thought, like, dude, I want to go to Wakanda. Like, Black Panther was amazing, and it had so much great representation, but the culture, like, they took it to, the inner city and how they're using that privilege to help that specific. I just feel like that's the important stuff. If you're going to write these characters, like, make them wholesome. Do you know what I mean? Like, make them representative of their struggles. So because that exists. I fucking love the Black Panther movie. It's so good.
I think maybe the hardest thing to do is to write a character that's not a straight up hero, like, and actually represent them properly without just falling into racial stereotypes, right? I've been rewatching Breaking Bad, and almost every Hispanic character, black character you see in that show is just, they're a drug dealer, and that's their entire personality, just drug dealer. This guy is gonna get killed or just die off screen, or he's just a bad person because he's just a drug dealer. That's
Wasn't that the norm back in the day? I mean, like, again, I grew up 80s and 90s. I do feel like minorities were typically, depending on what race you were, you may have typically been represented as the villain or the antagonist, or you had a small part. We just haven't had a lot of main characters, or like you
For
said,
sure.
not a lot of superheroes, or like the oldest Brinks security commercials I can remember as a kid always had this wealthy white family and the house is getting broken into by a person of color. It was like that was the MO for like 10 years. They just but it that messaging over and over and over to a young person who's very influential may not they can't logically process that like an adult. So that's why I think it's really important that we're shaking shit up.
Yeah, absolutely. Wakanda is that's fantastic. Like the Black Panther film, fantastic representation. Absolutely.
And X-Men as written, like in the comic book series, like the original series, and then the movies, the cartoon, all that stuff, they've always the whole idea of the X-Men, the idea of the mutant and things like that, it's all like a critique on racism, on homophobia, on things like that, like all the protesting that's taking place, like the population of America is incredibly anti-mutant, and a lot of what the writers were writing about was just the critique of being anti-gay or being anti-black, and then they've also made efforts to, like you mentioned, there's Storm, there's a number of characters that they're from all over the globe. Like X-Men really tries to incorporate like characters from everywhere, and I thought that was cool as a kid. So like as a young kid, one of the first things that I could like really identify with, I remember like, yo, Bishop is a black man. I remember thinking that was like really fucking cool. You know what I mean? As a kid, I was like, yo, look, like, that's it, we made it. Like we're in the
He had
X-Men.
that
Like this is
cool eye
cool.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a badass. Detroit Become Human. Absolutely love that game.
Very good.
Now I don't know, because it turns out David Cage is kind of a fucking asshole. So I don't know if he meant it this way, but like getting you to sympathize with these intelligent AI beings and watching, humans treat them poorly and watch them try to peacefully protest and get met with violence. To me, every time I played that game, I felt like that was undertones of the struggles that some people have had. I don't know if he meant it that way, but that was, I really enjoyed that
For
in
sure.
that game to me personally. I thought that was pretty awesome.
That was one of the better parts
that game
of that
looked
game.
like they jacked like a story from Isaac Asimov or something, and that is a big theme in all his books is like robot racism and stuff. Which I don't know, like the movie I, Robot, for example, like how they hated the robots and stuff like that. Yeah,
Also-
that's super cool. I don't actually know if David Cage intended that, but obviously, I don't know. The guy's a fucking asshole, and he's done, like Dowie alluded to before we started recording, some of his representation of characters is a little odd. Like all these dudes are French, like. Right, Quantic Dreams is it French
Yeah.
Canadian or
French,
French?
yeah.
It's a French, like French studio.
Yeah, it's funny listening to these characters that are supposed to be like, oh, this guy is from fucking Pittsburgh, and what game were we playing?
I think it was Philadelphia.
Philadelphia,
Which
Heavy
is
Rain,
even-
and the guy's
if-
got like a French accent. You're like, what the fuck is this?
Everybody has a French accent, and you're like, what's going on?
Except for
here?
one guy, Paco.
Oh,
No, they
And
had
this-
more of a Canadian. That was more of a French Canadian accent. Accent, wasn't it? I feel like that was a little more French Canadian in that game.
then you get to-
Maybe that was intentional because if it was in Detroit, like maybe it was Philly. I don't know. The game was funny. The Paco character was so fucking like stereotypically this like Mexican drug dealing gangbanger guy.
Hey, lady.
Yeah.
My name is Paco. Hey, lady.
Oh yeah, he was so sexual. He wanted to fuck the living shit out of the one reporter lady. It was terrible.
Paige.
You know who is overly sexual? The Book of Love in It Takes Two, dude. That's the first scene he's in. He's air humping.
Oh yeah, I still haven't finished that game. I need to finish that. Yeah, I want to finish that game so bad.
Where are those guys from? They're
not
foreign
sure.
too. They're not
no.
American.
Are they? Wait, no, they are.
Yeah, it's that crazy dude that ran up on stage and just started swearing and going off.
Hazel Light, Joseph
Ferris, yeah, maybe
Hazel
Portuguese. Ferris, yeah.
Hazel
not sure.
Light Studios. Where are they? Let's. Joseph Ferris.
You're doing.
They're-
While Chris
they're-
is looking this up,
He's from Lebanon.
Stockholm, Sweden, but they're owned by Electronic Arts.
Doey,
Yeah.
let's have you give a shout out to our channel. Tell those people what they need to do if they've been listening this far.
First of all, I'd like to thank all the listeners for their dedication. There's about 20 of you guys. I'd like to thank all of you in a row,
And
okay?
they're consistent.
Yes. I want to shout out to Teddy. I want to shout out to we have a lot of people that come by and they stop and they shout out us. We have some people from the Great Debate Game podcast that have been coming by, leaving comments. And I want you guys to know, if you've been listening this far, tell us what's your favorite character in a game, whether it be human, not human, female, not female. I tend to like Bayonetta. It's very sexy, very kick-ass character.
It's very on brand.
Does not seem like she would have sex with a man though. She seems like the alpha. She seems like she'd be pegging somebody.
Damn.
Dominatrix.
Yes. But I want
I
to
love
thank
you
you
so
guys.
much right now.
I want to thank you guys very much for coming to our channel and watching us and being a part of our family. The Whore Connoisseur, thank you. I want to drop a comment in the chat, just expressing how you feel about this topic, maybe the future topics to come. And if you haven't already, hit that like button, ring-a-ling, the ding-a-ling bell, make sure that you're getting all those notifications. Very important thing. It helps us grow. We are on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, not on Pandora yet. Still awaiting.
Pending.
If you ask me, there's nobody in the offices to even accept the pending request. I don't think there's anybody. If anybody is home anymore, they just left that running, like how MTV kind of runs ridiculousness all day, and they just like, who's who's in control here. But I'd like, please subscribe. Please share our videos. If you have anybody that you know that would appreciate this type of content. And I'd like to thank us a lot. We've been doing our thing. This is year 2 of the One Up podcast, and we'd like to thank you a lot.
Good job.
I love it. I'm a fan.
We love you too, Chris.
We appreciate you.
Before we run off, though.
Yeah, I was gonna say
I know.
final thoughts before we go. I was trying to jump us to the next one.
We harped a lot on how people view representation in games. What's your favorite representation? Like, you're in a game, what's a character that you felt like, oh, they represented something, some characteristic of the world really well?
Finn and Miles, 100%. They're just perfect. They nailed it. Miles wasn't just like a fucking Spider-Man. He was fucking Miles. And like him and Finn was such a strong female character. Like just such a well-written, their story together was incredibly beautiful. And I know there's a lot of people who haven't played it, but her moral ambiguity was perfection, because I felt like she was a very real world character. Like when money is limited and you don't have the best schools where you live, right? Like I just felt like they nailed the real world struggles that these two kids had, and like the burden they had, especially he had being just like Goosebumps. I just felt like those were some of the best 2 characters I've ever experienced in a game. Just amazing. They were just fucking nailed.
Go.
I personally, I would have to go back and say like Bayonetta. Off the top of my head, I really appreciate her as a character. I really could play anything that she's in. I just love her so much. I appreciate her in gaming. I think she brought a good, strong, powerful female to, and not every female has to be powerful, but I think as like a superhero, I like that she be spanking.
No one's saving Bayonetta. She's gonna save her own damn self.
Yeah.
That is a trope that is a thing when at least back in the day, if you watch Disney, they pretty much told you if you're female, you're a damsel in distress, wait for Prince Charming to rescue you. And Bayonetta does not need a Prince Charming at all. I get that.
She's kicking ass.
Is it my turn?
Yeah, it's your turn.
I was waiting for the name. I was like, is he gonna call himself? Is he gonna call me? The suspense got me.
Shout out to my female Oblivion character, Jamila. She could do backflips.
Wow.
Right?
She's got that 100 jump.
She was
dangerous name.
For me, honestly, the game Guacamelee made me so happy. I thought it was so cool to see like just Mexican culture just being the entirety of the game. That's the entire narrative. It drives the narrative. It drives the style. It drives. I thought it was so cool. I thought it was just such a fun, colorful game. I thought it was a cool way to represent my people.
Beautiful game. I played that on my PS Vita. One of my favorite. That's a PS Vita gem.
Not to mention, it was just a damn good game. Like, it's just a solid, fun little beat-em-up, brawling game. And the luchador vibes in it were just so much fun.
Yes.
Right. It ticked off a lot of boxes. It was funny. There was an interesting setting. I mean, it's like Mexican Day of the Dead. It's like what Coco wanted to go for, except not quite as well as this game. So play this instead.
Damn, that's a spicy take.
It's a Metroidvania. You know how I'm a Metroidvania horror? It was just really fucking good. And then his moves, they're like akin to like Street Fighter, you know? It's got the Ryu uppercut. You guys, if you haven't played it, Guacamelee is fire. It's fire.
It's a must play.
Hadouken.
Severed. Another female character, Severed. Also from the Guacamelee people.
And
Really?
also, I
Severed.
think Mexican, right?
Yes, that's also like a Mexican themed game Very good game. If none of you've ever played it, Severed, Guacamelee, People. So it's kind of got that aesthetic to it, but it's a completely different direction they went.
I need to
They're
check
not
that out.
from Mexico either. I thought that at first.
Huh.
Yeah.
What about you, Pooch?
I have a few, okay? There's a female character with a gun in the NES. I don't even know her name. In the Nintendo Friday the 13th video game. She was my favorite character. She had a gun. And I thought it was cool because it made me feel weird. Like I'm playing with a girl. And I remember having that feeling as a kid. Like, because it was uncommon. And I was like, I'm gonna keep using the girl because she got the gun. And then Jill Valentine stole my heart. It's one of my favorite all time.
I was just about to say that. I was like, yo, I never picked Chris. What, a knife?
Never picked Chris. Fuck that knife. Fuck that knife. Jill Valentine all day. I feel like it was a reference because she too started with the gun. Okay. And then there's a ton of others. Like Ellie from The Last of Us, one of my favorites. Like she is a strong character, but also very, very she's very bare. She's very sensitive. She's
raw.
She's not like the super strong, like, you know, exactly. Yeah, she's raw. And, you know, she's gay, and it's part of her character. I mean, obviously it's a big part of her character, but it's not like, it's not her ultimate drive or anything like that. I felt like they did a good job of trying to represent the different aspects of her character without making any one thing, like being a woman, needing even revenge. I mean, spoilers for The Last of Us 2. She doesn't get it. All right. It's amazing. All right. I love it. And I love her. She's the best.
She is very well written. That Left Behind DLC, like that is they really kind of nailed the mental thought process of like, am I attracted to the same set? Like they did such a good job writing those characters.
Mm-hmm. And my favorite people are the people that are so pissed off at The Last of Us 2, talking about this SJW bullshit. They made Ellie gay, and I'm like, she was gay in the first game. You fucking idiots.
There's an entire scene about it.
Yeah. So.
Not only that, I like the way Abby was written in as well. As a female character, I appreciate her dedication to gym culture.
For real. I'm jealous of
represented.
Abby's. I'm jealous of Abby's guns. My fat ass ain't going to the fucking gym, but I'm still. I'm jealous of her guns.
The Pornhub sub, the one with the really strong woman, and she's like,
This is one of Doey's dreams.
Now we're getting somewhere, folks. This is a deeper discussion.
This is for afterwards. But just imagine the image: laying bare, butt naked, fully erect in Abby's arms,
Like a baby.
Every curl, like a baby.
Like a baby.
Every curl
Oh
that
my
Abby
God.
does, she's getting a workout, and then you're. All right. I think it's TMI. All right. I think it's too much.
No, I think this is hilarious, actually.
You
what
fill
I
in the
need.
rest, okay? She curls you. You're butt naked, erect.
"It's what I need."
Things happen.
Doey wants it. It's this
I
fantasy.
mean,
I need it.
that's not for me, but I'm too dominant for that. But I'm like, I could be your Abby. If that's
Oh wow. Okay.